we'll give a couple more minutes, but I mean, basically the idea of this thing is basically just a chat of news that's come up. So, I mean, we'll all talk about news that we've seen in the last month, so in the month of May, and then just everyone to chats around it. So the idea is to try to do one of these more networking type. I mean, obviously, in person is always better with the lack of in-person stuff. We try to keep a cadence of more networking chat type things once a month. So we're looking at potentially the first Tuesday of every month doing this kind of thing if it ends up working, and then having that mixed with more technical tech-focused things as well, like Lawrence did last week. So we'll be diving more into sort of those Azure sketches, as well as deeper into data and Azure DevOps and Visual Studio tooling and those dev technologies, which is obviously the areas that the rest of us also focus in. So,
Hey Gordon.
Yes,
data for the win, bro. Data for the win.
I mean, if you didn't have data, you wouldn't have anything, right?
Exactly. Data is everything, guys. I hope you understand that. All on the call. Data is everything. Without data, we wouldn't be here. Right, Rory?
I mean,
we agree.
I mean, yeah, if you had more efficient data, I mean, I would have not been capped last week, but
yeah. So actually, speaking of which, how many are we on the call? Sorry, Gordon, I didn't mean to hijack this, but you know me, no, I can't help but hijack this.
It's meant as a chat. There's 10 of us at the moment.
Cool. So
I'm going to drop the slides presenting so we can do video and stuff as well.
Yeah, so I can't do video because I have my friggin' video hooked up to the work laptop and I just can't friggin' change it anyway. So guys, the ones of you that are on the call right now, how many are working from home? All of you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I would have guessed that, right? So you guys that are not from Microsoft or from Derivco, well, from not from Microsoft, but from other companies, how many of you have issues with bandwidth and running out of data and stuff? Anyone?
Well, no. So I have issues with Wi-Fi cold spots throughout my house, and people coming into my house and closing the door, and suddenly the cold spots increase, and quickly running to tell them not to close the door, and moving my Wi-Fi router out in certain places, and that's the biggest issue. On average, I use 70 gigs a day. I don't know where or how, and so I use 700 gigs a month, and I have uncapped, and they cap you at 1 terabyte. I use Telkom OpenServe, so I haven't really had that issue. But anyone using less than a terabyte a month is going to, and I'm not using anything fancy, is going to suffer.
Pornhub sucks, bro. Pornhub sucks badly.
You need to stop those 4K videos, like maybe drop it down to HD or something.
I will not actually lower my standards.
Exactly. Lawrence, I see your hand is up.
No, that's just when you asked the question of who works from home.
Oh, sorry, man. I thought it was Lawrence. Sorry, bro. Okay, so do you have a problem with caps and shit like that?
So the area that I live, I don't have fiber. So what I do is I've got multiple sources of bandwidth. So I've got from different providers, but it's predominantly all LTE. And I have one that's dedicated for Netflix and YouTube. But that's right. I mean, the 1 terabyte seems to be. 1 terabyte seems to be the profile, given all the work stuff that I do and the team sessions that we have, and watching 4 movies maybe a week, and yeah, it seems to be a terabyte.
information movies. Yeah, we get that, Lawrence. We get that.
Can I just share? Sorry, hand up.
Yeah.
Go for
How's
it.
it, Greg?
Yeah. So I use an app called Trip Mode if I'm struggling with my data. If something's chowing it, I can switch it off. Like on your phone, you can switch off various apps, so you can just stream the data for one app. So if it's my video conferencing, if I want to make sure I'm not doing an update while I'm in a call, yeah, then it really helps. So it's a paid app, but it's been well worth the money. I used it a lot when I was going to coffee shops and that, so I made sure that they would let me back and I didn't just like kill their data.
Cool. Could you paste the name of it here on the chat? I guess
Yeah,
we have a chat somewhere. Cool, man.
Yeah, today I connected to one of our legacy apps, which is still stuck in Team Foundation version control, and I use one of the scripts to set it all up because they're big branches in themselves. And I used a broken script, so it mapped the root of the repo. And I did that before one of our meetings. And I was in a couple of meetings. I was like, the internet's really feeling sluggish. And a couple of hours later, I went and saw it's pulled like 12 gigs of source out of the Team Foundation version control. And then naturally, for the rest of the day, my computer was a brick as our security software was using 70% of my CPU, obviously trying to figure out why I've just pulled 12 gig of source from the office. So that was fun.
Cool. Gordon, I'll stop hijacking the meeting that you set up. So I personally, I think that this is an awesome idea to have a monthly catch up. What caught our eyes at the month just passed. I think whatever it comes to like tech stuff, just things in IT that we are interested in. I like that idea a lot. So thanks, Gordon, for bringing that up.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, from my side, like the two big things that's happened in the last month is obviously GitHub Satellites, which I think was like early in May. 6th of May, 5th of May, somewhere around there. And obviously recently there's Microsoft Build. There's so much new tech coming out of that. Like, I mean, the code spaces stuff, GitHub is really cool. They obviously showed a bit of that on the Build side as well. For anyone who hasn't seen code spaces, basically what it lets you do is you can have files in your GitHub repo, which specify how you can set up like all the dependencies for setting up for that sort of branch. So project. Here's the list of things to go set up. Now you're basically configuring what that list of things are with files, and guys basically jump into a code space. It's a virtual machine hosted in Azure, and it's already got everything working for you. So you basically use the Visual Studio Online type experience. So you're using sort of like a VS Code experience. All your dependencies are running, and you can just sort of jump into projects and start working with them, which is pretty neat.
So I've got one prepared. If you guys want to just have a look at it, I prepared one. I did a talk recently on GitHub Codespace, and it's got something called deep links, which allows you. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, sure. That'd be awesome.
Sorry, I don't mean to derail. Tell me when I've spoken too much. So
when it goes past 7 o'clock, then you would only have spoken too much.
So this is the standard template. You've got the dev container. If you can all see my screen, you've got the VS Code project, you've got a little test project. And if I go into the dev container, it's actually got the Docker file, which you can set up your Linux environment with, and then your dev container.json, which actually allows you to set up your extensions there. And this one only has MS.NET tools and C#, so it sets up your Visual Studio code spaces. Now, the nice thing is that this is GitHub, and this is how GitHub code spaces can work. You can have deep link there, so you can go VS Code spaces, and you just click on that, and this is like incredible magic. Okay, but I have to have that signed in once I actually do a OAuth 5,000 times with my Windows Hello. Okay, we've signed in there. We can go back there now. Okay, so now, so our deep link there, so click through that, and it actually goes and fetches my full and just creates it. Now it's got my Git repo, it's got my instance types, and I've got the preview because I'm an internal staff of the Windows ones. So you can actually run Windows cores there, and then you just go create, and it's got everything up to it. And you, when this thing creates it, eventually I can go back there and show you. It will initialize it. It'll actually start to create the Docker container and then set up your entire Visual Studio subscription for you. While it's taking there, I'll just put this in the chat window. As you can see there, it's doing all of those templates there. So yeah, I'm speaking at the Abu Dhabi React on the 8th on this. Yeah, so it runs Docker, and the novelty is that your entire development, and you can tie into GitHub, is now online. There's nothing on my PC, but if I wanted to, and code, let me show you here, code. I have this running, also the same dev container, this entire project running on my local PC in the exact same way without any differences, because it's running in Docker, so it doesn't know it's running on the server. It just knows that it's running internally in on an emulator. So I've got, yeah, this is Visual Studio Insiders. And you see that it's starting the dev container, and this thing also is going to just build my project locally and run it when this thing finishes here. Exactly how this is the .NET Core code spaces, and then when this comes about eventually, you can see they're opening remote. I have this whole presentation. It's a whole thing. You'll see that there's the test project that we did there, and it installs something called remote extensions, which are not the same as common extensions. They're extensions in Visual Studio that are focused primarily on remoting into the WSL architecture to use a hypervisor. And then if that's done, I can actually go into my .NET Core, launch it there, run it, and then I've got port forwarding here. So let's check how cool this is. This is going to run locally here, and it's going to port forward on my local PC. It thinks it's running on there locally, but it's actually running on ports there. So I can go open port in browser, and it'll run here and it'll port forward. And you now have this port forwarding on your local instance here, connecting to forward ports. So that's when it eventually comes around. But I can actually go in once it just says hello world. You can go back here, and this is also starting the dev container, and I can run that also locally on my ports here. It's just there's no difference here. Yeah, hello world basically. And then if I go back to my creation log, I can actually go in and I can go. Let's set a breakpoint here. I'm going to debug in a container running in port containers. It's like my mind when I saw this. So I'm going to just hit a debug point there, and then I'm going to go back into run, and then I'm going to go into attach. These are just the basics, and then I'm going to run that, and I want to do that app there. It's a little bit tricky. And I want to hit refresh here, refresh. And it shouldn't actually come back. And then you'll see here, it's actually, well, when that does come through, it'll catch on there, and then I can debug through that. Yeah, there we go. It's actually debugged, and then I'll just leave it there. And this is what GitHub Codespaces is going to do, because this is really Codespace. GitHub Codespace is just a nice white labeling of what they got for us. I'm gonna just and then you can just shut it down. It can shut itself down, yeah, it runs here locally also. And I've got access to all of the workspaces there. Also, you can see that that's still running. I've got my remote one also, that the other one that is not started. And then I've got my local ones, the dev containers running there. And that's GitHub Codespaces in literally in a nutshell, very quickly. yeah, development is never going to be the same after that.
That is awesome. Can I just say something here, right? Sorry, Gordon. I have to say something. I'm an old guy, which Gordon knows and Lawrence knows, and Nike knows as well. But so Rory, who is now the official spokesperson from Microsoft, right? He talks about Linux. Guys, you who are as old as I am, you remember once upon a time in the land of Hashapais where Stephen Ballmer, God bless his little socks, stood at a conference and said outright, Linux is a cancer.
Open source is a cancer, yeah.
Open source is a cancer, sorry. God, how things have changed. God, how things have changed.
So in 1991, an engineer left Sun Microsystems to join Microsoft. And in 1991, Java was invented at Sun Microsystems as part of a revolution, because Sun really wanted to create this revolution in programming and that. Do you know the name of the engineer in 1991 that joined Microsoft? Satya Nadella. So if you want to know the huge culture shift there that brought that about, and that brought the Google kind of mindset, because Sun Microsystem was the Google of the 90s, is Satya and bringing that kind of mindset into that. And the acquisition of GitHub really was the final catalyst in that regard, because what it did was it set the center stage for Microsoft to start to be a leader in that regard, because they no longer could hide behind that shared source mindset that they had to have a partnership with the customer before they gave the source. They now were at the forefront. Maybe if I could just give an introduction also, because I kind of work for all of you in some way or in some form. I work in the developer relations team for Microsoft. Currently in the marketing developer relations, which is a weird kind of mindset. But I'm moving to on the 1st of July to the engineering cloud advocacy, the big boys. That song playing with the big boys in my head. So what I do is I'm responsible for making sure right now and in the future to making sure that you're happy, you're skilled, and that you are have the tools and the capabilities to do your job and to build careers. So if you do have any issues, if you have any insights or any issues at all within the Microsoft ecosystem around developers, give me a shout. Like the code spaces, like some of the hackathons we're running right now. That's me. Thanks.
Very cool. So speaking, sorry, last thing I will say for a while. So speaking of Java, so you, the ones of you that are somewhat old, you obviously, as Rory mentioned here, heard about Sun and Java, and there was this huge thing between Microsoft and Sun around Java and who could do what. So I was in the late 90s or late 90s, I think it was. I was at a developers conference in London, a Microsoft developers conference in London, where they announced their new Java language, Visual J++, I think it was called, even though, but they didn't call it Java. They called it Jakarta, because Jakarta is the capital of Java. So yeah, and now they are shipping Java with SQL Server and all cool stuff. And Rory is talking about Java at conferences and Java in Azure. And yeah, once again, how things have changed. Anyway, Gordon, I'll shut up now, I think. Maybe, perhaps.
No, I mean, on that note, Donovan Brown said the first time in his life that he ever installed Linux was after he joined Microsoft.
That's cool.
But yeah, I mean, did you guys watch GitHub Satellites or Build? Like, what stood out as being cool for you? I mean, for me, like the Scott Hanselman's keynote was awesome. Like, it was a very different flow of keynotes. It's sort of like you're sitting on their shoulders watching them in a day in the office kind of a thing. And they sort of like dropped all these random announcements without saying, hey, and today we're announcing this thing. They're just like, hey, here's some cool stuff. Yeah, what do you guys think about those conferences and the content and stuff?
So I said I wouldn't say anything, sorry guys, but seeing that everyone is shouting at once, I was actually somewhat disappointed with Build. I had expected more earth-shattering news, some really, really cool shit. I mean, there was cool stuff there, absolutely, but I had expected more. That's just me.
Is maybe the reason for that because, I mean, so what I've found over the last couple of years is there's less stuff is surprising to me because more stuff has been released more often, like outside of, like you don't wait for a big conference for big stuff to land. It's sort of, it's ready, it's 2 weeks before the conference. Okay, everyone, here it is.
Yeah.
And then we'll just show it again at the conference.
True. But I mean, you guys, you other guys on the call here, I mean, don't be shy because Gordon and I am talking. I mean, it's hard to get the word in edgewise when Gordon is talking, but guys, come on, you need to pipe up as well. So
I can speak from the belly and the beast. And what is important is to ensure that developers have good quality, repetitively accessible material to make sure that they can actually do their job in a productive manner. So what you'll notice is that huge investment in MS Learn docs, in tutorials, in training, in certification. And one of the key drivers on these conferences now is rather to train the developers out than to be this kind of Vegas style shenanigans. And for all of the major milestones, first party and baseline events, they give away free exam vouchers. So it's a kind of nearly an industry trend now that you would come to these events, build, ignite, ready, and inspire. You'd get a free exam. You would use that free exam to build your career there. And then the focus would really shift from a kind of an extravaganza to more of a, this is the individual. This individual has a path, a career path that they want to follow. And we give them the opportunity to follow that path and to get a free exam voucher with that. And that's really the kind of mindset change that we want to go from that Vegas style partying to more aligned to focused on the developers and their careers.
Yeah. Once again, from people on the call, what caught your mind, what caught your eye in May, or well, even before May? What cool shit did you see the month just gone by? Evandran, you're muted, bro. Get with the technology, man. You're still muted, bro. You're still.
Sorry. If I could, I'll just say something, but it's a little bit off the Microsoft topic, but it still involves a lot of their tools. I just found like there was an explosion of courses available and media to consume during lockdown. So, to be honest, it was difficult to choose a lot of where to put your time. I saw a lot of, I'm personally interested in the AI space. So I saw a lot of great courses in that regard, and I invested as much time as I could while still doing work that would pay because I consult. And yes, so I just wanted to say, like, I think that's my experience of the time. I mean, from every technology, it just seemed like there was this explosion of like people offering promotions or training or events. Well, it was nice to see Build came online. I think Google postponed their thing, and sorry, I won't mention the other ones. But yeah, it was nice to see Build coming on board in that aspect. I'm ashamed to admit I didn't have I was keen to go, but I just didn't have the time to invest in that one. But I did see other courses that were beneficial, and I reposted them. Yeah, so that's my contribution.
Talking about Google, did you guys see the articles where like they said Google gave $1,000 to every employee for their work from home stuff, so like they could set up their offices properly?
Yes. Go Microsoft, come Microsoft, that would be great. Even if it's half, I need a new chair.
Yeah, so Microsoft employees actually got a similar budget, but we didn't really sing from the rooftop like Google did. But yeah, so Google's very vocal, Facebook also. But at the same time, I think that the different subsidiaries have different cultures and different requirements. For example, in some subsidiaries they give you a car. Like a full car, and that to me would be greater than a chair. But
the chair would make you so comfortable.
Yeah, I have a chair. I have 2 chairs from Microsoft. I asked for them because I have a bad back. So they gave me and ordered a chair there. So it depends also on the culture, the culture of the region. The States would be different. UK would be different. It really depends. So I think that Google is talking primarily around the US subsidiary, which is specific to the funds that were provided, and they just made a huge vocal noise about it.
Yeah, I mean, Google generally, when they say, look at this cool thing with employees, it's generally their like head office. Look what we did for these guys, and it's assumed that's everybody.
But speaking about that and the big companies, did you guys see Facebook's Zuck's town hall speak, where he essentially said that if you guys want to work from home and you want to move away from the San Francisco area, you can expect to pay a pay cut, because we will now pay you based upon location. So if you are working in rural like Kansas, you will not earn nearly as much as someone in San Francisco.
That's the norm. If you saw that kind of debacle that they did in San Francisco, where they published salaries. Remember, in America, it's one of your amendment rights to actually vocalize and know how much other people are earning. So then immediately in San Francisco, they started publishing their salaries, and the cost of living in San Francisco is incredibly high. It's just absurdly high. What we pay for a house in South Africa, you get a 1-bedroom small little apartment. And people were shocked at how much they earned. But in truth, the salaries and the kind of packages that they give there are adjusted to that, and that's the standard.
Rory, we can argue about that. I think that is completely bullshit. Either you are, if you move to San Francisco and you're getting a salary, you are obviously getting a salary for your knowledge and whatever, and then you decide to move to somewhere else and you're getting a pay cut. For Jesus, yeah. Man. I that's just my take on it. At least it caused some discussions here, which is cool.
So what happens is that the people I've spoken to can't leave San Francisco because, one, they're in so much debt that they can't actually afford to leave, and they're stuck. They're absolutely stuck, and they're in this kind of never-ending debt cycle. Student loans, yeah, it's terrible.
Anyway, okay, let's move away from that topic. Sorry, guys.
Hey, talking about the big tech guys, do you see also with Twitter, they announced that they're letting the employees, if they want to, they can just work from home forever. Yeah, that was quite interesting.
That is cool. That is very, very cool.
And then and Trump's new regulation which goes along the lines, because obviously with the social media giants or any of those platforms, the idea is that they can't be held responsible for the content that's on there because it's not them that's posting the content. But now, in an effort to do to help with fake news, they do fact checking, and then they tag things as being like this is like either they remove it because it's fake, or they put links to they put links to stuff that's like, well, here's actually the facts on what this is. And they did that to one of Trump's tweets. So they said, well, I mean, because I think it was around the mailbox ballot voting stuff. So he posted something about how corrupt that's going to be, and they did a fact check. Go read on what this actually means. And he's basically signed a thing now that says, well, if the social media platforms get involved in politics, they're no longer excluded or exempt from that kind of content, which is an interesting thing. So on one hand, they're trying to help with the spread of fake news, but on the other hand, I mean, like I think it was Trevor Noah or one of those guys that hosts those kind of shows, basically said like he's angry with an app on his phone, and now he's using his power to basically like shout at the company for it.
Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, it was Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah, it's insane. The world is losing its goddamn mind.
Yeah. God. So you guys that are on the call, well, I mean, what tech are you interested in going forward? What tech are catching your eyes? What
I can talk.
Yeah, Lawrence. We know what you can talk about, but go ahead anyway.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I went through all that effort to get onto Build and to book the sessions and whatever, and just my schedule caught up with me. But I'm very much, I'm going through all of the, some of the announcements that are coming out, and there's quite for me particularly, not being a developer, the interest is particularly on things at the edge, stuff coming out for Azure Stack. I mean, the gap between Azure Stack and Azure, it's nice to see that product develop where it'll never truly be on parity, but in terms of services, but it's most definitely getting on parity in terms of experience for customers. So to see some of the stuff Microsoft's doing on Azure Stack and the hybrid space with some of their hardware appliances coming out. And I just saw something, I don't know if you saw it, Mr. Niels, Azure SQL Edge.
Yeah.
Did you catch that?
Awesome, bro. That is awesome, bro.
That is
awesome.
And did you guys know that Microsoft has a suite of hardware products, server type products?
You mean Microsoft mouse and keyboard?
No. Let me just bring it up and I'll show you. So let me just.
Are you talking about the third-party certified hardware, like from HP and the like, or is it like actual Microsoft server?
Oh, this is actually proper data technologies, like.
That's the data.
DataBox.
Yeah, the data boxes,
Yeah.
which you buy actually, and they're actually not all available in South Africa. The DataBox Edge and I think the DataBox is available, and they're primarily used to ship petabytes worth of data into your data center and out via very strict security. You actually have a hash that you have to sign in there and a PIN and everything like that. I don't know if we make the physical hardware. I think we partner with a third-party OEM. I'm not too sure about that. But these are being rolled out into South Africa. If you want, you can go to the region availability and it'll show you what to do. Products by region. So products by region. I'll show you now which ones are available.
Did you other guys know about these products?
I had heard about DataBox, but I hadn't heard about all those various SKUs about it. I mean, that's very, very cool.
Yeah.
It's the primary use case for this when your telecom line goes down and you can't upload stuff to the cloud. You put it on the DataBox.
No. So, like this, for example, right? I mean, this is predominantly for two purposes. For when you are, let's say, a big corporate. Let's take this example. You guys heard about Amazon did the demo the one time they brought in a semi truck.
Yeah.
So if you want to, so this is pretty much it. So if you want to migrate that amount of data into the cloud, you want to seed that data. So you obviously don't want to transport that data over the wire. And the technology allows for you to, well, just flip and roll this thing in, seed your data, encrypt the data. You get a specialized key. This data is shipped to Microsoft, and then it reconnects that data with your key, so your data is seeded. These ones are pretty much, well, they're obviously in just the size of it in terms of how much of data you can actually store in there. But this is a unique one. The Azure DataBox Gateway is both a physical and a virtual appliance, right? And what I'm seeing a lot of customers doing now, this is a very interesting one. If you want to unlock, say, 200 terabytes of data on-premise, but you don't have 200 terabytes of data, but you want all the data to seem as if it's available because nobody ever accesses 200 terabytes of data at the same time anyway, the technology allows you to connect itself up to Azure. And you can connect to the storage using like a Swift share or I think it's a file SMB share, and it presents the file shares and people can continue using them. But what the technology is doing behind the scenes is it's moving infrequently used data, which is more of the data, into the cloud, and it does it at a block level, so it doesn't do it at file level. And the beauty of this is that the data can be rehydrated in the cloud. So it's not just like storing it in the cloud. You potentially could rehydrate the data. But here's the thing: for you to unlock 200 terabytes, you need, well, let's just say 20 terabytes. You need 10 to 12% of that data for cache on-premise. That's how advanced this technology is. So you don't need to have anywhere near the size of the data you want to have available. It's about moving the data in the cloud. It's about having the data so that you can access the data, but not necessarily. It's like OneDrive files on demand, but this is like for your data center. And so we're seeing a lot of this. There's the work we're doing at the Peace Parks Foundation. We starting to do some work now on the Azure Stack side. So we're getting some of the vendors involved, HPE and Huawei. And so Azure Stack is going to come into the equation in this kind of scenario. And you do get the one new DataBox devices, Azure Stack Edge. Azure Stack it comes in two flavors: the Hub, which is the monster, and the Edge, which is a 1U. And this one here is literally a 1U chassis that you can have at the edge. And this is where you run things like Azure SQL at the edge, or your cognitive models, or and potentially, I think it's coming soon. You can actually run Hyper-V VMs on it. These are designed to run at the edge. You could potentially like run your analytical models, or AI models right at the edge, in potentially disconnected scenarios.
That is very, very cool. That's very, very cool.
So as per the website for the region availability, the DataBox, not the DataBox Disk Heavy or Gateway, has general availability in Q2 2020, which is No, now actually.
Oh.
So yeah, so this is Q2. But that being said, if you've seen that the general availabilities might not come to the region, so just keep your eyes posted for the announcement when it comes through. And then, ideally you've got a data box set with petabytes worth of Minecraft maps.
Um,
Like that last there.
This is the DataBox Edge. That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, very cool.
You know what this is? The Ruggedized series. This is the you take a look at YouTube, where the guys have Azure stacks on their out in these mobile vehicles and potentially on their backs. So this is how small these things are.
Cool. So I want to run event hubs and Databricks and the SQL BDC on that one, hey?
Mm.
While it's running on your back,
Exactly.
go for a hike, and you can do all the machine learning on your back.
Exactly. Hey, Greg, that would be something for you, hey? How cool would that be?
I like it. Anything with machine learning. It's my name.
Cool.
Something random that's actually quite old, but I stumbled across it again yesterday because I saw something interesting on YouTube. So have you guys heard about the Microsoft Solver Foundation? I think that's what like the library is called.
Yep.
That stuff is flipping cool. So like there was this thing basically said like almost unsolvable Sudoku problems. And I was like, I remember this because I wrote an app like forever ago that used the Microsoft Solver Foundation to solve any Sudoku problem. So the basic idea is you feed it a bunch of constraints and then you tell it solve. So it's a mathematics framework. So you basically say, you basically almost like lay out basically what the board would be, or the spaces of the board would be sort of in an array. And then you say that one has to be this value, that one has to be this value, that one has to be that value, and sort of model out what a Sudoku board would look like. And then you tell it solve, and you basically say like, obviously, the different lines, this can be 1 through 9, and the different squares, those can be 1 through 9, but obviously only once. So you basically just feed it all the rules of Sudoku. And then like in this case, it had 2 values filled in. And then it's like 74 milliseconds later, here's your answer. This is so amazing. The reason I brought it up though is because like I went and found this old code and I was like, hey, I wonder, because obviously .NET Core can just use anything. I wonder if how well that would work with .NET Core. So I spun up a new .NET Core web app and I'm like, just reference this old library from like probably 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Just works fine. I'm like, that's so amazing. Like when you talk about like moving all your legacy crap onto more modern tech, like it's just so easy. So yeah, something random, but talking about AI and stuff, my brain thought about what I recently re-stumbled across.
Thanks, good. Very cool.
Very, very cool. Cool.
Someone's clicking a pen a lot.
That's me. That's me. I am so irritating in that way. I'm irritating in many ways, but especially this.
I think we've lost a few. I think we've lost a few of the people. I think a few people fell off.
Yeah, 3 guys dropped.
So so coming out of build also was WSL2, which I installed yesterday once the Windows update had been pushed to everyone. Yeah, no, without my consent, killing my bandwidth and telling me to restart. But WSL2 is pretty fancy, and it's not only the Linux distributions that you can run on your local PC, but it's also opening up for the technologies. The reason code spaces work so easily and quickly and hyper-performant is because there's been a total rewrite on the Docker layer, the hypervisor on your local PC. So opening up a lot of kind of opportunities for you to run tooling that takes advantage of the hypervisor. Docker now is just so performant. It's just incredibly quickly. You saw how quickly it was on my PC, starting up with that Visual Studio emulation. Yeah, so that's something you can install WSL2. It is not an easy install. I warn you now, if you go down this route, it's not difficult, but it's time consuming. It'll take a good 3 hours of your life just to install WSL2 with all the patches and everything. But once you're there, then you can go and install the necessary Linux distro, and then some of them on free. So I went into the store and I was like, okay, cool. I want this one and that one and this one, like a kid in a candy store, and they're like $40. So not $40, 40 Rand. And I was like, no, everything in Microsoft is free. You give me now. And
because it's Linux, it must be more free.
Yeah, super free, open source, and it's not. So like running a operating system on my operating system is now not free, and so that's something I need to get used to. But I've got WSL installed and I'm not running anything, so you don't have to. You can install WSL2, but you don't have to run anything. So that's also something that you can actually do. But have a look at it. If you use Docker on your local PCs, definitely install it though, because it's way quicker. Because that whole Docker on Windows thing was just a hack at the end of the day.
But Rory, you need one of the later versions of Docker than the Docker that is WSL2 enabled. Or I remember back in the day, you had to install a beta version of Docker in order to be able to run it on WSL2.
I don't have that. I've just got the plain old Docker desktop, the latest Windows update that installs WSL2. Now, that being said, I'm on one of the earlier rings. So, and I know that this was pushed out with WSL2 to all of the rings. So you should all have them. And then that's it. So just standard Docker desktop and WSL2, and it's really performant. For the first time in a very long time, Docker hasn't crashed on me also, which was concerning.
Oh, you haven't run it for a while then, is that what you said?
Sorry,
you are correct. Before you had to go into Docker desktop, and the WSL stuff was under experimental for a long time, but I think they announced at build that it's like becoming stable or something, and in the next release you won't have to do that.
Okay, Greg, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry, I'm a bit of a noob when it comes to Docker, but I'm trying to get it right at the moment. And my question is like installing the local version of Docker to get it. I know there's no cost association with that, and you can test locally, but like, wouldn't it just be better, like you're saying, Docker crashing or like having to, from a time perspective, solving those issues, rather just create a build that like publishes your Docker and just writes off like that's going to be my dev cost for it? Isn't it cheaper? Like, have you ever felt that way, or you prefer the local version?
So Gordon, you can answer.
So one of the things, like, I use Docker a lot, not for my apps themselves, but like, because Niels is here, I'll take a stab at SQL. SQL is so hungry and it destroys my machine. So I use Docker to host my SQL server. So when I want to do SQL dev locally, I run SQL in the Linux container in Docker. And I fire that up, and I have different configurations depending on the different apps that I'm using on my machine at the time. And also like other services and stuff that I don't use that frequently, that's what I use Docker for, just so it's not running on my machine. Because when I want to play games, I don't need SQL to be doing things on my disk at the same time.
Of course you do. Everyone needs SQL, bro. Everyone needs SQL.
Okay.
But yeah, Rory, I don't. What do you want to add to that?
So at the end of the day, with the Linux kernel, it emulated a hypervisor better. With Windows, you always had this kind of pseudo Hyper-V that it emulated. And the minute that you remember Minikube with Kubernetes, that debacle that you had to do with that was one of the most painful exercises. I lost my Kubernetes cluster more times than I've had hot meals this year. And it all came down to Windows, not being able to manage the process adequately, the Kubernetes cluster crashing, getting corrupted, and then me starting again. And that happened during a talk even. with the current installation, you are Linux, so you don't have to like pretend that you can access the kernel directly. And what do I use Docker for? I've used Docker to keep my base install, my Windows install clean. If I've got some kind of weird software that I don't want to reinstall, install, or change versions, then I use Docker. Like for today, I was looking for a Docker instance that run. So I speak on accessibility. The accessibility CLI running on Linux with a phantom headless Chrome browser, and I'm glad I didn't install that, because else I would have to reinstall Windows with that phantom headless browser, because Chrome works just as well. It's a nice way for experimentation. One thing that we want to do for developers is to help them and to allow them to experiment. And I think that this whole kind of code spaces allows them to do that. So I did put on the chat window there the code spaces, but it occurred to me that I didn't actually put in the kind of repository that dev containers, the vscode-dev-containers that Microsoft is building. So Microsoft is building a repository of vscode-dev-containers, which basically has Docker and Docker Compose. Can I share my screen again for you guys? This is pretty awesome. This is the secondary part of Rory's awesomeness. So here's the vscode-dev-containers, and then in vscode-dev-containers you've got a little container folder there, and the container folder has those dev containers for your VS Studio, and it has like Ansible, blockchain, CLI functions, so you can run them locally, machine learning, Python, Terraform, C++, Dapper, Docker existing container, Docker Compose, Docker from Docker, .NET Core, Java, JavaScript, Jekyll, Kubernetes, and these all run in Docker on your PC via code spaces using the power of WSL2. And this is what they're building up, and it's very soon. You can see they're building it like every day. I see something new coming in there. I'll put it in the list there. But this is really the power of Docker. It allows you to experiment and not have to kind of like work out what other people have done before and break your local PC by trying to prove that you don't have imposter syndrome, which we all do. We all have imposter syndrome. Yeah, that's what I've kind of realized now. Okay, so it's in the chat window there. Have a look at it. Go into Visual Studio Code Spaces, spin them up, and it's kind of like the first Hello World that you had for the first programming when you were just a Jola. It is a life-changing feeling, spinning up the world.
Like your first kiss, right?
Yeah, mine wasn't spectacular at all. Hey, this was way better than.
I don't know what that says more about your. Yeah, well, anyway, let's not go there, guys. I have a live issue. I fucking gotta go. This was awesome, bro. Everyone, thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Rory. Thank you, Nike. Thank you, Greg, and everyone else that has left the call now. Thank you so much. It was great. See you in a month.
Thank you all. Thank you, Neil.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Joe, we've got a couple of minutes left. I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to share.
I was just going to add on that Docker's great for like things that you sort of want permanent, well, semi-permanently and like easily reproducible, which is why you have a Docker file. But if you're ever in a situation where you just want to test some dodgy exe that you downloaded off the internet, there's Windows Sandbox for that. And it amazes me how quickly that spins up and you've got a fresh Windows environment. I don't know if anyone else has tried it.
Yeah, I forgot about Sandbox, eh?
Cool.
Well, you've got that whole hypervisor. Sorry?
Are you able to show us that quickly, Nike? Because I've heard about it. I haven't actually played with it.
Okay.
I don't
know. Let me move stuff on my desktop to the other window.
Demo quickly.
Quickly, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait. Rory, why can't I share my desktop on this Microsoft tenant, Rory?
It's on my one. It's not on Microsoft tenant. You
No,
should
but
be able
I'm
to
joined.
share everything.
I'm joined from the Microsoft tenant.
Oh yes, then you'll get interesting things.
The share button is grayed out.
Mine works fine. Hey, mine works fine. No, so what you've done is you've joined as a guest, which has limited permissions.
Yeah.
You haven't actually joined as the tenant, which actually has the permissions, the adequate permissions.
But I mean,
so
well,
No,
well, the
before
thing
I
is,
could share though, but I
no,
think it's.
so I think
I'm
what
on a
it is
preview version now.
So, Nark, I think what it is, I mean, if I join calls, if I'm not joining a Microsoft call, I switch back to my own tenant and then join. Because if you're on the Microsoft tenant and you join to someone else's call, you get limited on what permissions you have. Because this call already is out of my normal, like my private Office 365 tenant.
Yeah,
but I think
this is definitely a recent thing because I've been like I've joined quite a few calls and I have shared my screen before. Well, the last call that I shared my screen for, I used the same tenant. I think it's the preview. I'm on an internal ring of Teams here.
Maybe you just don't want to share your screen. Maybe there's too much of a mission. He's like, he's in all the good spots of those videos, and he doesn't want to like switch that off. Maybe that's something that we can look at next time, Mark. I just want to say
sure.
that RTX stuff that you shared last time. Flip, I've been loving that. And I was on a call the other day with people, and there was so much background noise from their side. So I just said, cool, the output noise, just kill it. So I could hear them clearly, but they were actually sending me a lot of noise, which is amazing.
Oh, you tried it the other way around. I haven't tried that yet. I only use the noise suppression on my microphone, not audio going into my headset.
Yeah, I do it both ways. As I said, there was so much noise coming from them.
Really? Both ways?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go say that. Yeah, so I mean, they had lots of wind and stuff on their side, and it just cut it straight out. It was amazing.
I'll prep a demo for the next session for Sandbox. I'll think of something dodgy to Google in my Windows Sandbox.
or we can get, or maybe we can get some similar related content together, and for the next session, a not news session, we can do a user group session on Sandbox. Maybe lots of that kind of content, the WSL 2 stuff. We can just see what we can get. If we can get a full session of that, maybe have that as a session that's sort of themed that way. And then, I mean, either or. We need to try to get the cadence going. If we get a cadence going, we can get more engagement and more people. Because we before lockdown we were really bad with our cadence. So I mean, hopefully we can get this going quite well.
Gordon, in your defense, I don't know, but Durban's a bit slow. It feels like Cape Town and Joburg is owning it, and I want to light a fire here, but I don't know where.
No, 100%. But I mean, I also feel if you talk to Alan and them, when they started out with their user groups, it wasn't the first day there was 100 people and every session 100 people came. So I think definitely what would drive it is that everyone knows the first Tuesday evening of every month, we have this online news chat. When we're allowed to be in person again, we say, okay, the second Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever the case is, we do in-person technical things. And once you know that's the cadence for that, you sort of look forward to those sessions. I think when there is no cadence, which is when there's no cadence and also no sessions like what we were doing, I think it's a bit hard for us to grow our community that way. But I mean, when you put in the effort, see how it goes. I was chatting to Donovan Brown around this topic it's quite a while back. I think it was part of the radio TFS sessions. And we were saying what's the smallest group that he's ever had? Because I mean, he just draws crowds. He said he went to this one place and he says he doesn't know who was speaking. Maybe it was Handsome in another session, but he had 3 people who show up for his session. And you know how energetic he is for his sessions. He said he delivered it the same way. He said because those 3 people came to his session, they deserve the full Donovan Brown. He says just because there's 3 people, they don't deserve anything less. And I was like, jeez, man, that is amazing.
So I did a session for one the other day, but thankfully it was recorded. So I thought, let me just give it my fullest. The people who watch the recording won't know that there's only one person online, but like that person felt incredibly, privileged, engaged with me. I also remember the riots in South Africa. So, the xenophobic riots that we just recently had. We threw a user group. Yeah. So I run the Java user group in Johannesburg, and we didn't realize how bad the riots were. So we did the user group, and one person pitched up. It was at one of our customers, and they spent a lot of money, and they advertised, and we couldn't realize what was going on. We thought maybe the speaker wasn't good, and the speaker was brilliant. Turned out that the world was burning, and this person then had an audience with an entire company, the organizers, the speakers, and there was one guy in the audience sitting down, physically looking at the speaker, and he won all the prizes, he won all the giveaways. He took 5 pizzas home with him, beers, everything like that.
Jeez.
Turns out that he actually lived a block away from the venue, so he decided to walk there and that it would be safe, whereas everyone else was, yeah.
Well, it's any consolation. I've been to a few meetups where there's only been a handful, and I've got a few T-shirts. So I'm like that.
Brilliant.
I'm like one guy, and I'm so grateful for you guys for putting in the effort. You have no idea, and it really, I'm telling you, it does pay off, because like when it does, although I'm not all Microsoft. Like I do dabble in the other tech, but I put people on Azure systems, and like I'm very grateful for the effort and the energy and the money that gets put into the community. I'm sure it will pay off. I just feel it's like a long road.
Phrase? A something tide lifts all ships. I think it's a heavy tide lifts all ships though. So I used to run the bookstore's user group, the bookstore at Jeff's little store for 2 years. So prior to joining Microsoft, that's one of the reasons they did that. And I pushed for that heavily, and I've been pushing for their cloud for a while now. And you might ask, but wait, Rory, you're at their competitor. Why would you want to do that? Because at the end of the day, there's a reason why car manufacturers are all based in one road. There's a reason why clothing manufacturers, jewelry manufacturers, they all do that there, because they don't actually compete with each other. Ironically, they don't. Yeah. They give the impression they do, because then they can provide better services and quality and choice, and the consumer can actually be his own person. And it's the same with the user groups that you're going to. We give the impression that we're in some kind of competition, but we're not. We speak to each other on the side pretty heavily. We're really kind of focused on that, and we build each other up. There's no selfishness in anything like that.
That's good. Yeah.
Except if you're in the Node community, we hate those guys.
Well, I was saying for Google doesn't like Microsoft. It's like written into their company policy that they're not allowed to use their software, but they can use stuff from the .NET Foundation, because that's not Microsoft, and that's why they do all their dev with VS Code.
A little stats is that we run more Linux on Azure than we do Windows, but our main competitor runs more Windows than us. So that's the counter stat is that we're not the biggest window user in the world.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense though, because I mean, I don't know, lots of the stuff that I remember there was it Spark or something else that they tried to do a Windows port for, and it was just performing terribly in Azure. And then they decided just to use the Linux version, and they're like, this is so much easier. I mean, I know there was something at Derivco when, I mean, at the moment, if I'm not mistaken, we also do Linux systems now as well. It's obviously not the first thing to jump to. But I mean, many years ago, like Linux was a no. And guys did ports for Linux software for like monitoring and stuff. And when they did the POC, they had like one tiny box of running the whole company stuff. And they're like, this is great. And then they're like, hey, we need to put it in production. Well, we can't run Linux in production. So they did a port to Windows, and they ran like 4 beefy Windows machines with pretty much the same code, just made for Windows, and it just was not happy. And like it, yeah. So it's interesting.
Now, so they've taken it off GitHub, but they had a competitor for Alpine Linux. When they started actually going into Linux, they wanted to create Docker containers and their own custom Docker containers. So they created these two containers they call them Pico Linux, and it was 2 megs. So then also released with that was a DOS container. I think it's probably still out there. That was like a meg big. So it's like a meg operating system running DOS that you can run certain Windows-based processes. And this is what they see as a lot of the embedded tooling they want to broadcast needs DOS still. Really does need DOS. And they need these hyper-performant DOS containers to run these embedded old-school processes. And it's gone down to like a meg. I mean, DOS, remember, 640 kilobits. So that's there is an entire industry of creating hyper-performant Docker containers. If you think about it, if you had that option, you were basically a god when it came to building systems. And soon we'll be maybe building developer systems. Like Pravindran will be having his own little Silicon Valley company where he just builds vscode-dev-containers. And he employs me as the jester or some other, useless, whatever, jovial person.
There's nothing wrong with the jester. That's all I do. I just tell jokes.
I throw parties for developers, which, I'm still going to get back into. So Ronald's gone. I need to go, guys. It was nice to speak to you. If you want me to speak on any subject, so just tell me and I'll speak also. But if you want me to amplify also, if you've got a talk or anything, I can put it on the channels and get your user group the go-go dancers that you guys need.
Awesome.
Cool.
I mean, if you can bring back TechEd to Durban, that would be great. I mean, obviously post-COVID, that would be really amazing. Because that's like the only thing that we had going for us, is that we had TechEd in Durban.
No, you had Insider's Dev Tour. That was pretty spectacular. No, that was Cape Town. That was
Cape Town and Joburg. We don't get anything nice, Rory. I mean, we had TechEd, a 5-day tech conference. It was TechEd Africa. It was the TechEd for the continent.
And then what is the one after that when they made it smaller? It became a 2-day thing. It was Tech something.
Tech Summits, but we didn't have one of those. We Cape Town and Joburg had.
I'm sure because it was the first one I attended, and that was the last one.
I can't remember what it was called, but yes, I remember
it was called like Tech Connect or something. But it was like a watered down version. And then that was the first one I attended when I was just getting into the scene, and then they cancelled it after that. Yeah,
TechEd was amazing. I had like so many awesome memories of that.
Yeah, I was with Java AWS and the light, and I wasn't really part of the darkness, so I can't really comment. But I need to go. I'll see you guys. Cheers.
Nice. Guys.
Cheers, Praveen.
Go.
Cheers, Gordon. Have a good one.
Cool. Cheers, Greg. You too. Cheers, Nak.
Cheers.